November 19th, 1942. Outskirts of Kalach-on-Don, Southwestern Front, Soviet Union. The temperature has fallen to 23 degrees. Frost creeps across every exposed surface like a thin white veil, and a moon smothered behind low clouds hides the battlefield in a darkness so thick it feels alive. The only sound is the distant rumble of artillery from the Stalingrad pocket, short, angry booms rolling across the steppe. But here, on the edge of a shallow Soviet trench network, nothing moves, nothing breathes, nothing except a single man lying face down in the snow. Private Alexei Mikhailovich Sokolov, 22 years old, rifleman of the 650th Rifle Regiment, has been motionless for nearly an hour. The men in his platoon think he is dead. The retreat earlier had been chaotic. German flares splitting the sky, MG-42 tracers slicing through the dark, boots slipping on frozen mud. Sokolov vanished in the confusion. Someone shouted that they saw him fall. Someone else said he didn't get up. In the panic, they accepted it as fact. By the time the platoon regrouped in the shallow communication trench, his name was already spoken in the past tense. But Sokolov is not dead. He lies still because movement means death. He can hear the German voices less than 30 meters ahead. A reconnaissance element. 12 men at first, then more. Their boots crunch softly in the snow as they approach the abandoned Soviet position. They speak quietly, confident, certain the Soviets have fallen back for good. A corporal laughs. A canteen lid clicks open. Someone strikes a match, and the brief flare glows on helmets stamped with the eagle and swastika. Sokolov's right glove is soaked with blood, stiff with ice. Not his blood. Most of it belongs to Corporal Yuri Denisov, the man who died beside him during the retreat. A shell burst threw both men into the trench. Denisov's radio was destroyed in the blast. Sokolov remembers the sparks falling onto the snow like dying fireflies. He didn't move even when the German patrol passed within arm's reach. Only when they walked on did he let himself breathe. Now they are returning. A full German infantry Zug, almost 40 men, moves slowly through the dark, probing for signs of life. If they find the trench occupied, they'll call for flares, mortars, maybe even armor. The Soviets will be blind and exposed. They won't survive the night. Sokolov senses it all with the clarity of a man who has nothing left to lose. He inches his hand toward his rifle, an old Mosin Nagant 9130 with a cracked upper hand guard. He checks the chamber by feel alone. The metal burns his fingers with cold. 1 round, 5 more in the magazine. No time to reload once firing starts. Silence is his only advantage. A German officer's voice cuts through the darkness. Vorwärts, überprüfen Sie die Gräben. Forward, check the trenches. Sokolov closes his eyes and listens. Footsteps. Breath. The faint jingle of a field canteen. They're spreading out, forming skirmish lines. If even one of them stumbles onto his position, they will fire into the trench and end it. He slowly rolls onto his left side, using the snow to muffle the movement. His heartbeat thuds in his ears. He remembers home. Arkhangelsk, the frozen river. His mother lifting sacks of firewood stronger than any soldier he has met. She told him once that life was not about fear, but about the moment you choose to stand or choose to vanish. Tonight, in this frozen ditch, that moment is here. A lantern flicks on briefly. A German private holds it high to illuminate the trench lip. That is the mistake. Sokolov fires once. No hesitation, no warning shot. The lantern shatters, and the private collapses before he even realizes what happened. The sudden darkness is complete and disorienting. 2 Germans shout. 1 fires blindly. Snow jumps from the trench wall as bullets whip past. Sokolov crawls to the far corner, using the trench angles as cover. He fires again. This time at the silhouette of a helmet rising above the parapet. The man falls backward with a heavy thud. The Germans scatter. Someone screams, "Scharfschütze!" Sniper. Good. Fear buys him time. More boots crash through the snow. He hears an MG-42 team rushing to set up. If they deploy it, the trench becomes a death box. Sokolov sprints through the connecting trench, rifle tight against his chest. His boots splash through icy puddles. He breathes through his teeth to stay silent. The MG-42 barrel begins to rise into place. In the moonless dark, its shadow is unmistakable. He lifts his rifle and fires. The gunner drops. The assistant reaches for the weapon, but Sokolov is already on him, the buttstock striking the man's jaw with a sickening crack. He grabs the MG-42 by its bipod, drags it into the trench, and discards it. He cannot use it. Too loud, too heavy, too revealing. The Germans now believe they are under attack by a full Soviet detachment. But it is only him. He moves like a shadow, firing from one angle, appearing at another, never staying still more than a moment. Panic spreads through the German ranks. They shout over each other. Someone yells for flares, someone else shouts to fall back. Then silence. Just the wind and the soft settling of disturbed snow. Sokolov reloads slowly. One stripper clip, 5 shells sliding home. He whispers to no one, "Za rodinu," for the motherland. He rises from the trench and steps into the darkness. The wind pushes a thin veil of snow across the open field, erasing Sokolov's footprints almost as soon as they form. He keeps his body low, moving in short bursts from one collapsed section of trench to the next. The night is black, but not silent. The Germans are whispering, sharp, clipped phrases, the kind men use when they are trying to hide fear. Their voices drift from different angles, some near, some far. The squad he broke apart has regrouped into 2 smaller units, each convinced the attacker is a Soviet forward element probing for weakness. None of them imagine the truth. The unit killing them is one man. Sokolov stops behind a mound of frozen earth and listens. His breath hangs in a thin cloud. He counts the shapes ahead. 7. No, 8 Germans. Spread wide, rifles raised, helmets catching faint glints of starlight. They move slowly, weapons angled high, scanning for the Soviet line they think is waiting to open fire. He raises his Mosin and waits for the wind to settle. The barrel trembles from the cold. He tightens his grip and exhales. A single German soldier breaks formation, stepping toward a depression in the ground. The sound of snow compressing under his boots is loud enough to reach Sokolov clearly. He fires. The shot echoes through the empty fields like a hammer blow. The soldier collapses, knees buckling, rifle flipping from his hand. The others scatter instantly, diving for cover. A flare launcher snaps open. A hiss. A streak of white arcs into the sky. Sokolov closes his eyes. He knows what comes next. The flare blooms overhead with a harsh white glow, flooding the battlefield in ghost light. Shadows stretch long across the snow. Every contour of the field becomes clear. Sokolov rolls sideways just before rifle fire tears through the space where he had been lying a moment before. Snow leaps into the air from the impact of bullets. He crawls fast, ignoring the icy burn against his palms and knees. Germans shout positions. "Links, links! Left, left!" He finds a low ridge, no higher than his knee, but enough to break a shooter's line of sight. He presses the rifle barrel through a narrow gap and fires twice. One German falls immediately. Another jerks backward, arms flailing. A third drops his weapon and screams for a medic. Sokolov doesn't watch the man fall. He's already moving again, sliding down the side of the ridge into deeper darkness. The flare above sputters, dims, and dies. Darkness slams down onto the field like a curtain. Silence returns for half a second, then panic breaks loose. The Germans begin shouting over one another, firing in random directions, convinced a full Soviet platoon is surrounding them. One of them yells that there are 10 shooters. Another claims there are dozens. Someone begins blowing a whistle, signaling for support. The sound echoes thinly across the frozen ground, but no reinforcements answer. The nearest German reserve unit is far behind the line, and they assume the noise is just another skirmish in the chaos around Stalingrad. Sokolov settles into the dark, letting their fear do the work for him. He wipes frost from his eyebrows and checks his rifle again. 3 rounds left. He reaches into his coat. 1 more stripper clip. He loads it by feel, careful not to let the metal snap too loudly. His fingers are numb, almost wooden, but the motion is familiar. Mechanical. He spots movement ahead. A German NCO crouches behind a tree stump, scanning with binoculars. Sokolov wonders briefly why a man would try to scout in total darkness. Then he sees it. The NCO carries a small, shielded flashlight, cupped in his palm, projecting a narrow beam barely visible from a distance. He uses it to read the ground, to find tracks. Sokolov's tracks. He is good, experienced, dangerous. Sokolov shifts slowly, inch by inch, until he has a clear line. He holds his breath and fires. The NCO jerks sideways, the flashlight dropping and rolling across the ground. Its beam spins wildly, illuminating fractured pieces of the field in chaotic flashes. The remaining Germans flinch, firing at the moving light as if it were an attacker. The beam rolls to a stop, pointing upward. Snowflakes drift lazily through it. Sokolov moves again, faster this time. The Germans have lost their discipline. He can hear their boots crunching as they withdraw toward a stand of leafless trees. They fire blindly into the dark behind them. One of them shouts that the Soviets are pushing from the flank. Another claims they saw bayonets. Sokolov keeps to their left, parallel, outpacing them. He knows this terrain. He crawled across it hours earlier. A ditch lies ahead, cutting across the field like a black scar. The Germans will reach it in less than a minute. If he positions himself correctly, he can hit them before they even realize they're exposed against the skyline. He sprints low, rifle clutched in one hand, the other brushing the snow to feel for dips or obstacles. His feet slide on the ice. He steadies himself with a palm against the ground. He reaches the ditch first, drops into it. The cold air feels heavier here. He crouches, presses his back to the frozen wall, and waits. Boots approach, fast. The first German leaps the ditch. Sokolov shoots him mid-air. The man collapses on the far side with a hollow thud. The next 2 stop abruptly, confused, scanning the dark. Sokolov fires twice more. Both fall. One tumbles into the ditch beside him, landing in a twisted, motionless heap. The remaining Germans break. They scatter into the trees, abandoning formation entirely. Sokolov climbs from the ditch, breathing hard. He watches their silhouettes dissolve into the forest. He should not follow. They may regroup, set an ambush, call for heavier support. But he also cannot let them retreat and alert the main German line. He moves forward anyway. A single man hunting an entire unit. The snow begins to fall harder. A storm is coming. Snow sweeps sideways as the wind rises, carrying with it the low groan of distant pine branches bending under the storm. Sokolov moves between the trees, his steps silent, except for the faint crunch of crusted frost beneath his boots. The forest is dark, darker than the open field, and the canopy above catches what little moonlight survives the storm clouds. The air feels thicker here, heavy with resin and cold, and every sound seems swallowed before it can travel far. Ahead of him, the Germans leave a trail not of footprints. The wind is too strong for that, but of sound. Hurried breathing, branches snapping, a stumble here, a muttered curse there. They are tired, they are afraid, and they are convinced they are being hunted by an entire Soviet assault group. Sokolov tightens the strap on his rifle, feeling the stiff leather bite into his gloves. He pauses behind a fir tree and listens. The forest hums with the storm, but under it he hears something else. German voices, hushed but frantic. A sergeant is trying to restore order. His voice cracks as he issues commands. "Stop running! Form up! Halt! Halt!" The command ends in a scream. A soldier has struck his knee hard against a fallen log. He whimpers in pain. The storm carries the sound strangely, like an echo bouncing between trunks. Sokolov moves closer, stepping through thick roots and scattered branches. He sees the faint outline of 3 Germans crouching beside the injured man. Their rifles hang loosely. Their discipline is broken. One gives the wounded man water. Another whispers something about Russen überall, Russians everywhere. Sokolov braces his rifle against a tree, breath steady. He fires once. The man offering water collapses instantly. The other 2 dive behind the log, dragging the wounded soldier with them. One fires wildly, bullets slapping into tree bark near Sokolov's shoulder. He lowers himself and circles left, slipping between the shadows. The Germans keep firing at where they think he is, shredding a patch of snow and leaves. Their panic blinds them. He appears behind them and fires twice. Both fall. The wounded German tries to crawl backward, leaving streaks in the snow. Sokolov stands over him. The young man's helmet is tilted back, his eyes wide with terror. He stammers something. A plea, maybe a prayer, but the wind swallows it. Sokolov hesitates for a single heartbeat. Then he lowers his rifle. The man is no threat. His leg is useless. He will not survive the cold. Sokolov leaves him. Not out of mercy, out of necessity. The forest is large, and the unit he broke is still scattered across it. If even a few escape, they will bring larger forces by sunrise. He moves deeper, following the storm's howl. The wind carries more voices. 5, maybe 6. He sees flickers between the trees, shadows moving in a staggered line. One carries a flare gun. Another clutches a map tube. They are trying to regroup with the remaining survivors. They stick close to a narrow deer trail, stepping quickly but carefully. Sokolov lowers himself into a crouch behind a fallen tree trunk. He unslings his last fragmentation grenade, a relic from the early months of the war, heavy and unreliable. He pulls the pin, holds the lever tight, and counts silently. 1, 2, 3. He lobs the grenade gently, letting it arc low through the trees. It lands near the trail, bouncing once. "Granite!" someone shouts. The explosion lights the forest in a brief yellow flash. Snow erupts. A tree trunk shivers. 2 Germans fall instantly, thrown aside like dolls. Another collapses with a shrapnel fragment buried in his neck. The flare gunner fires upward reflexively, and a bright red flare shoots into the sky, lodging in a treetop. The forest glows crimson. Sokolov moves immediately, because he knows what the flare means. It will draw attention. If any German units beyond the forest see it, they will send a patrol. He has minutes, not hours. The 2 surviving Germans scramble deeper into the woods. One carries the map tube still, clutching it like a lifeline. The other limps, blood trailing behind him. Sokolov follows at a deliberate pace, his breath steady, steps precise. The forest is his ally now. He knows the rhythm of fear. He hears the limping soldier's ragged breathing long before he sees him. The man collapses against a birch tree, gasping. The map carrier stops beside him, murmuring reassurance. They think they've outrun the enemy. They think the explosion scared him off. The limping soldier closes his eyes. A branch snaps behind them. They freeze. Sokolov emerges from the dark, rifle raised. The man with the map tube tries to lift his weapon, but shock has slowed him. Sokolov fires once. The man drops, the tube rolling from his hand. The limping German opens his mouth to shout, but no sound comes. Sokolov steps closer. Snow swirls around them. The man stares up at him, not defiant, not begging, simply empty. Sokolov lowers his rifle again. "Gay," he says quietly. "Go." The German blinks, stunned, then limps away into the storm. He will not get far, but he will not warn anyone tonight. Sokolov picks up the map tube and opens it. Inside is a rough field sketch. German fallback routes, patrol cycles, the location of a forward supply cache. Valuable information. He tucks it into his coat. Lightning cracks through the sky, followed by distant thunder. A rare winter storm is sweeping in fast. Snow thickens until the world becomes a shifting blur of white. Sokolov shields his face with his sleeve and pushes deeper into the forest. Somewhere ahead, the last cluster of Germans is still running. He intends to find them before the storm does. The storm gathers strength, turning the air into a whirling curtain of white. Trees sway under the weight of ice-laden wind, their groans rising and falling like distant artillery. Sokolov pushes deeper into the forest, leaning forward against the gusts, each step measured and deliberate. Snow gathers on his coat, clinging to the seams, frosting the edges of his cap. The visibility shrinks to mere meters. He moves by sound now, small, fragmented noises carried between the trees. Somewhere ahead, the last remnants of the German unit stumble blindly, trying to regroup or survive until dawn. They no longer speak. They no longer call for one another. Fear has sealed their voices. Sokolov hears only the scrape of boots against frozen earth, the occasional snap of brittle branches, and the sharp exhale of exhausted lungs. The forest floor dips into a shallow ravine. He descends slowly, sliding the final step as snow collapses beneath him. At the bottom, a narrow stream cuts a dark line through the white landscape, its surface half frozen, emitting faint cracks as the storm chills the water. Sokolov crouches beside it, listening. The wind whistles above the ravine, but down here it is softer, almost muted. He hears footsteps approaching from the left, several men, moving cautiously, weapons raised, breaths ragged. He ducks behind a large rock, steadying his rifle. Shapes emerge from the storm, 3 Germans, spaced far apart, rifles trembling in their hands. One wipes frost from his eyelashes, the gesture slow and weary. Another clutches a knife in his free hand, the blade shaking uncontrollably. The third glances around constantly, muttering under his breath as though trying to convince himself he isn't alone. Sokolov fires once. The man in front collapses without a sound, falling face first into the snow. The 2 behind him react instantly, diving to either side of the ravine. One fires blindly upward, bullets whining off nearby tree trunks. The other scrambles behind a stump, trying to find a target in the storm-darkened forest. Sokolov slides into the ravine's shadow, circling the second soldier. He moves low, careful to let the wind mask his approach. The German fires again, muzzle flashes illuminating his terrified eyes. Sokolov steps behind him and brings the butt of his rifle down hard across the man's shoulder. The German drops his weapon and falls to his knees. Sokolov jabs him once with the rifle barrel, forcing him face down. Snow mutes the man's cries. Sokolov leaves him unconscious, not dead. He turns toward the 3rd German. The man is running along the edge of the ravine, slipping, falling, scrambling to his feet again. Fear has erased any thought of fighting. He is trying to escape into deeper forest, toward a cluster of boulders faintly visible through the storm. Sokolov gives chase. The wind slashes across his face as he climbs out of the ravine. His boots sink deep into drifts, slowing him, but the German is losing strength faster. The man reaches the boulders, presses his back against one, and raises his rifle with shaking hands. Sokolov approaches from the side, angled carefully. The German fires. The bullet whips past Sokolov's coat, tearing fabric. He ducks, rolls, and emerges behind another boulder. The German breathes fast, panicked, uneven gasps. Sokolov steps out, rifle leveled. The German's weapon drops from his hands. He raises both arms slowly, eyes wide, lips trembling. He whispers, "Bitte, please." The storm howls around them. Sokolov lowers his rifle slightly. A prisoner is a burden he cannot carry, but killing a man who no longer poses a threat feels wrong. He points toward the deeper forest and says one word, curt and cold. "Weg. Go." The German stumbles away into the storm, disappearing in seconds. Sokolov retrieves the fallen rifle, removes the bolt, and tosses it into the ravine. No one will use that gun tonight. He checks his ammunition. 3 rounds left. Snowflakes cling to the open bolt as he closes it again. He moves on. The forest changes as he progresses. The trees are closer together, their branches weaving into a dense canopy. The storm is muffled. The air feels heavier. He sees faint lantern glow ahead, warm light flickering between trunks. He kneels, lifting his rifle. The last cluster of Germans has made a stand. 7 of them. Maybe 8. They gather around a makeshift shelter built against a fallen pine. A lantern hangs from a branch, swaying with the wind. One soldier tends to another's arm wound. Another loads a fresh magazine into his MP40, hands trembling from cold. An NCO stands among them, voice steady despite the storm. He urges them to hold position until morning. Reinforcements will come. The Soviets are disorganized. The shooter, he insists, cannot be everywhere. Sokolov tightens his grip on the rifle. He will start with the lantern. Without light, darkness will bury their coordination. He inhales, exhales, fires. The lantern shatters. Darkness crashes over the shelter. The Germans shout, scrambling, firing wildly. The muzzle flashes creating brief, chaotic snapshots of their panic. Sokolov moves. Through the trees, through the storm. He becomes the darkness they fear. The lantern's last sparks fade into the snow as darkness settles heavy and absolute. The storm swirls harder now, warping sound, bending light, turning the forest into a living, shifting maze. The German survivors shout over the wind, their voices frantic, overlapping in confusion. Their rifles jitter in their hands, muzzles sweeping wildly across empty space. Without the lantern, every shadow becomes an enemy. Every gust sounds like boots in the snow. Sokolov stays low, circling the shattered shelter from the right. He moves quickly but silently, each step placed with precision. The forest floor is softer here, layered with pine needles under the snow. His boots sink without crunching. He breathes shallowly, keeping his profile small. He senses the Germans trying to build a perimeter, 2 kneeling behind a fallen trunk, 1 crouched near the shattered lantern, another pressed against the shelter remains. Their formations are loose, unsure, panicked. A new sound cuts through the storm, the metallic snap of an MP40 bolt being cocked. Sokolov freezes. 1 German has moved off to the side, away from the others, scanning the trees with grim determination. This one is calmer, more disciplined. His breath doesn't tremble. His head moves in slow arcs, eyes searching for anything out of place. Sokolov drops to his stomach, pushing himself forward with elbows and knees, sliding silently under a low tangle of branches. The cold bites through his coat. Snow fills the gaps in his sleeves and melts against his skin. He ignores it. His focus narrows. When the disciplined German steps closer, Sokolov rises just enough to align his sights. He waits for the next gust of wind to cover the sound. The moment it hits, he fires. The German falls backward into the snow, weapon skittering from his grasp. The shout that follows from the others is raw panic. 1 soldier screams a name, "Müller!" and rushes toward the fallen man. Sokolov fires again. The rescuer drops beside him. 4 left. A flare gun fires upward from the shelter remains. The round arcs through the trees and bursts overhead in a harsh, white glare. Shadows stretch long between the trunks. Snow becomes a blinding sheet of silver. Every detail is exposed. Sokolov dives behind a tree as bullets tear through his previous position. Chips of bark spray across his coat. A German machine pistol rattles wildly, the muzzle flash strobing the forest in chaotic pulses. He shifts to a new angle, taking advantage of the flare's glare. The Germans expect him to stay low. They expect movement near fallen trees or deep snowdrifts. Instead, he rises halfway, fires from a standing angle, and drops again. A German collapses, his body slamming into a tree trunk with a heavy thud. 3 left. They retreat deeper into the shelter ruins, turning overturned logs and debris into makeshift barricades. Their officer shouts orders, calm, steady commands that cut through the storm. He tries to anchor their fear, to give them something to hold on to. Sokolov recognizes the tone. A man who knows he is going to die, but refuses to show it. The flare flickers, dims, and dies. Darkness falls harder than before, thick, suffocating. The storm smothers what little light remains. Sokolov steadies his breathing and reloads. 2 rounds, one in the chamber, one left in his hand. After that, nothing. The realization is cold and sharp. He tucks the last round into the magazine with numb fingers and chambers it softly. The officer begins to speak in a low voice, giving instructions to his 2 remaining men. Their silhouettes shift in the darkness. They think the shooter is repositioning. They think he's waiting. They decide to strike first. One German breaks cover, charging into the trees with a grenade in his hand. Sokolov sidesteps behind a thick birch as the explosion rips through the snow, shaking loose branches overhead. The flash blinds the remaining soldiers. They fire instinctively, shooting at shadows cast by the blast. Sokolov emerges behind them as the smoke settles. He fires once. The man nearest the shelter falls forward, face hitting the snow with a soft thump. 2 left, the wounded soldier struggling to breathe behind a stump, and the officer, calm, steady, dangerous. The officer rises slowly, dropping his empty MP40 into the snow. He raises his hands, palms open. The wounded man moans behind him. The officer speaks steadily, voice carrying the weight of experience. "Wir müssen nicht weiterkämpfen," he says. "We don't have to continue fighting." Sokolov doesn't move. The officer takes a single step forward, boots sinking into the snow. He gestures to the wounded soldier, insisting something quietly. Perhaps mercy. But mercy is a luxury that does not exist in the frozen forests outside Stalingrad. Sokolov fires. The officer falls without a word. The wounded soldier tries to crawl away, shaking, leaving a trail of red in the snow. Sokolov lowers his rifle. The man looks up at him, eyes filled not with defiance but resignation. Sokolov steps past him, leaving him to the storm. The forest will finish what he does not. The wind howls louder, carrying the scent of smoke and gunpowder. Sokolov senses the night nearing its end. The storm begins to ease, ever so slightly. Dawn is approaching, and with it, the battlefield will reveal the truth of what happened here. The storm loosens its grip on the forest little by little, as if exhausted from its own violence. The wind quiets to a low moan, drifting between the pines. Snow still falls, but gently now, soft flakes spiraling downward without urgency. The world begins to take shape again, outlines reappearing where darkness had swallowed everything whole. Sokolov moves through the thinning veil of white, his rifle hanging at his side. He no longer crouches, no longer runs. The forest is quiet behind him. The sounds of gunfire have long faded. Only the crunch of snow beneath his boots remains. He heads toward the edge of the tree line, back toward the trenches, back toward where the night began. The sky above him is no longer black. It has softened into a deep, bruised blue, the first hint of dawn bleeding into the horizon. His legs burn with fatigue, but he keeps walking. His coat is stiff with frozen blood, most of it not his. His gloves are torn at the fingertips. His breath comes out in harsh bursts, spreading in pale clouds that drift behind him like ghosts. He steps out of the forest and onto open ground. What he sees is not the battlefield he left behind. It is something else entirely, something quieter, something final. The snow-covered field is dotted with bodies, scattered as if the earth itself had risen and forced them into stillness. German soldiers lie in every direction, some half buried in drifts, some sprawled where they fell, others curled in the final instinctive attempt to protect themselves from the cold, the bullets, the night. Steam rises faintly from some of the corpses, the last heat of life bleeding into the frozen air. 47. He does not count them. He does not need to. His commander will. The political officers will. The newspapers, if they ever hear of this, will exaggerate the number or erase it entirely. But Sokolov knows. He walked among them. He heard their last breaths. He saw the fear in their eyes as the darkness swallowed them. He walks between the bodies, passing helmets cracked by shrapnel, rifles buried in snow, torn maps, frozen canteens. A pair of binoculars lies shattered near a boot. A grenade pin glints faintly in the early light. A German officer's coat flutters slightly in the faint breeze. A few meters away, near a shallow mound of snow, lies the MG-42 he disabled earlier. Its barrel is frozen solid, jammed with ice. The two bodies beside it are buried almost completely, their shapes distorted beneath the snow. He pauses only long enough to note their positions before moving on. The trench network comes into view ahead. Low shapes etched into the ground, half collapsed, rimmed with ice. The same place he had crawled from hours ago, believing he would die there. Now it is silent. No shouts, no gunfire, no flares. Just the stillness of a battlefield caught between night and morning. Sokolov climbs into the trench slowly, feeling every ache, every bruise. His knees tremble as he lowers himself to sit against the frozen wall. He leans his head back and exhales, long and heavy. For a moment, he closes his eyes. The silence is overwhelming, but it does not last. Footsteps crunch in the snow. Not German. These are heavier, slower, cautious. Soviet boots. Voices follow. A squad approaches from the direction of the main Soviet line, rifles ready, silhouettes sharp against the brightening sky. A lieutenant drops into the trench beside Sokolov. His goggles are fogged. Frost has settled in his eyelashes. "Tikto, Odin?" he mutters. "You alone?" Sokolov nods once. The lieutenant stares at him, uncertain whether to believe what he sees. He pulls himself up, scanning the field. His jaw tightens. His breath catches when he sees the bodies, dozens of them, spread across the snow. He calls the others forward. They approach slowly, whispering, wiping frost from the lenses of their scopes to confirm what they're seeing. One of them mutters a prayer. Another crosses himself. The lieutenant kneels beside Sokolov and says quietly, "Eto biloti." "Was this you?" Sokolov doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. His rifle sits across his legs, the bolt frozen halfway open. His coat is stiff with blood and ice. His hands shake not from fear, but exhaustion. The lieutenant takes a long breath, nods once, then signals to the others. "Uvesti ego," he says. "Take him back." Two soldiers help Sokolov stand. His legs buckle at first, but he steadies himself. He slings the rifle over his shoulder and steps out of the trench. The sun edges above the horizon, casting a thin, pale light across the field of bodies. As Sokolov walks away, he does not look back. The others will handle the reports, the bodies, the questions. He has done what he came to do. He moves toward the Soviet lines, silent as the snow beneath his boots. Behind him, the field remains still, 47 German soldiers lying in the cold dawn, and one man walking away. The Soviet forward command post sits in a shallow depression behind a snow-covered ridge, a cluster of dugouts reinforced with timber and scavenged sheet metal. Smoke from a small stove curls weakly through the cracks of the roof, barely visible in the pale morning light. Inside, the air is thick with sweat, gun oil, and the sour smell of damp wool uniforms drying near the heat. Officers lean over maps lit by a single lantern, voices low, movements sharp from days without sleep. The wooden door pushes open. Two soldiers enter first, brushing snow off their coats. Behind them, Sokolov steps through the threshold. His legs tremble, but he refuses the arm offered to steady him. His coat drips melted frost on the floor. His rifle hangs at his side like a dead weight, bolt still frozen open. His face is pale, lips cracked, eyes sunken. Still he stands straight. A captain at the table glances up, annoyed at the interruption, until he sees the state of the man before him. "Name and regiment," the captain demands, though his tone softens halfway through. "Ryadovoy Sokolov Alexei Mikhailovich, 650th Rifle Regiment," he replies, voice hoarse from cold and silence. The captain frowns. He flips through a stack of casualty notes. "Your unit reported you missing. possibly killed. Sokolov nods once. So they thought. The captain studies him carefully, then gestures for him to step closer. You're injured? Sokolov shakes his head. No, not mine. One of the soldiers who escorted him steps forward. Comrade Captain, you should see the field. What field? The one east of the forest, near the old trench line. The captain exhales impatiently. I'll see it later. No, Comrade Captain. The soldier insists, lowering his voice. You should see it now. The urgency in the soldier's tone freezes the room. The captain sets his pencil down. Explain. The soldier hesitates, searching for the right words. There are bodies. Many. He pauses. German. Dozens. Maybe more. Spread across the snow. Scattered like they fought a whole company. Sokolov says nothing. He simply waits. Another officer scoffs. A German patrol got caught in the storm. Nothing more. The escorting soldier shakes his head. No. They were shot. Close range. Different positions. Multiple angles. Like small engagements across the whole forest. The officers exchange looks. The captain turns to Sokolov. How many? Sokolov responds without emotion. 47. The room goes silent. The junior lieutenant mutters, Impossible. Another officer crosses his arms. A recon unit? Maybe a machine gun crew? No, Sokolov says quietly. Just me. The captain narrows his eyes, trying to determine if the young rifleman is delirious. You're telling me you engaged and defeated an entire German nighttime assault group by yourself? I didn't engage, Sokolov replies, lifting his head slightly. I survived. The captain stands. Show me. Minutes later, a small command group follows Sokolov back toward the ridge. The snow crunches under their boots as they step into the clearing. The sun is rising now, casting a dim orange glow across the field. Then the officers see the bodies. Their steps falter almost in unison. Some stop entirely. Others move forward in disbelief, scanning the positions, scattered across trenches, half buried in drifts, clustered near the tree line. Frozen expressions twisted in fear, rifles fallen at odd angles, severed lines of retreat. One officer whispers, Boże mój! Another removes his cap and presses it against his chest. The captain crouches beside a corpse, brushing snow from the man's uniform. The entry wound is clean, straight, professionally placed. He rises and turns slowly, taking in the full extent of the battlefield. The broken MG-42, the shattered lantern, the cratered snow, the trails leading into the forest and ending abruptly. He walks back to Sokolov. You did this? Sokolov gives a single nod. The captain stares at him for a long moment. Why didn't you retreat to your unit? I tried. Sokolov says, but the Germans came first. And then? Then I stayed alive. The officers glance at each other, unsure whether to be impressed, concerned, or afraid. Heroic feats make good propaganda, but this is something else. Something harder to categorize. Something born not from glory, but from the frozen, brutal logic of survival. The political officer who arrived moments later clears his throat loudly. We will record this. His tone suggests uncertainty. There will be interviews, statements, perhaps recognition. Sokolov stares past him toward the horizon. Do what you want. The captain steps forward. You executed your duty with exceptional skill. The regiment will want to know. Sokolov shakes his head. The regiment needs to hold the line. And you? The captain asks. Sokolov adjusts the sling of his rifle. I'll go back. To the front? Yes. The officers expect bravado. They expect pride. But Sokolov's voice is flat, drained, monotone, like a man simply stating the weather. The captain nods slowly, recognizing the truth behind the expression. Some men fight because they must. Some men fight because they are ordered. And some men fight because the war has consumed everything else inside them. Sokolov turns away, walking back toward the Soviet line. His boots leave faint marks in the snow, marks that the morning wind begins to erase almost immediately. Behind him, the field lies silent. 47 German bodies, one man walking back into the war. Then the wind sweeps again, and the final tracks fade.